Hello and welcome to Asia Newsweek. I'm Yvonne Yong. Together we'll go through the top stories in the region and to go beyond the headlines for a deeper look at Asia. Well, let's start in Taiwan. In his first National Day speech since being elected, President LaiChingTe said China has no right to represent the island's democracy. He also called on China to use its influence to help end conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. East Asia correspondent Kathleen Calderwood reports from Taipei.
As you mentioned, this was his first speech since being elected for National Day as president, and he spent some time speaking about how China did not have the right to represent Taiwan and repeated previous comments he's made about the fact that Taiwan, referring to its formal name, the Republic of China, is not subordinate to Communist China. Now, LaiChingTe went on to say that his mission as president was to defend Taiwan's sovereignty from annexation or invasion by China, and said that it was important for society here to remain prepared. But he also spoke about Taiwan's willingness to collaborate and cooperate with its neighbour in the areas of climate change, preventing disease and, of course, addressing regional stability. President Lai also spent some time speaking about the international assistance that China has received over some decades, including its admission to the World Trade Organization and how that had helped that country's economic development. But he said that that too came with some responsibilities. This is what he said.
We hope that China will respond to the expectations of the international community, use its influence and work together with other countries to end the Russian-Ukraine war and conflicts in the Middle East. Taiwan is also prepared to shoulder its international responsibilities and contribute to regional and global peace, security and prosperity.
And we'll have more on that a little later in the program. Also coming up on Asia Newsweek, is it the perfect sanctuary or a feline catastrophe? We meet one woman and her 100 stray cats. On the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Laos, China's Premier met with Australia's Prime Minister and agreed to lift a ban on Australian rock lobsters. It signals a huge shift in relations between the two countries, but given China's economic situation, it's not entirely clear how the Chinese market will respond when the ban is lifted later this year. Here's reporter Bang Xiao.
My thinking about this is that we'll see a very short period of time where the sales of lobster will be boosted, given that right after the lift of the ban, it could be the Chinese Lunar New Year, where people will spend lots of money on the delicacy that they usually don't enjoy or don't have a chance to have. But given that the Chinese economy is currently in a dire situation where public servants and people in general are facing a pay cut in the country, and at the same time, the property market and the stock market is still seeing a very interesting dynamic right now. So it's very hard to say the Chinese market will respond to Australian live rock lobster in a very strengthful way.
Just some headlines now. A massive blast outside Pakistan's biggest airport has killed 2 workers from China and injured at least 10 others. The Home Minister says it appears to have been a targeted attack on foreign nationals. Several vehicles were destroyed following an explosion outside Karachi's international airport. In a statement emailed to journalists, the separatist Balochistan Liberation Army claimed responsibility for the attack. The group is known to target the thousands of Chinese workers in the country who are involved in Beijing's multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road initiative. Staying in Pakistan, police have charged former Prime Minister ImranKhan with attempted murder after a police officer died following violent protests on the weekend. ImranKhan has been behind bars since 2023, but officials allege he urged his followers to rally to demand his release. Police say this led to the killing of an officer who died in hospital after being injured in clashes in the capital, Islamabad. The protests triggered a complete lockdown in the city, with roads blocked by shipping containers and mobile phone services suspended. The village of Kotyang in Thailand's northeast might seem like a world away from the war in the Middle East. But here, one family hopes for the return of their relative, who was among the 30 Thai nationals taken hostage in the October 7 attacks a year ago while working on a farm in southern Israel.
Far from the conflict in the Middle East, a church in northeast Thailand fills with people who sing and pray for the return of Wachara Siouan, one of 6 Thai nationals still believed to be held captive by Hamas. Praying is one of the ways his mother Wawaro of Christian faith holds on to hope.
We can only pray to God. Asking people doesn't give us answers.
Wawaro takes care of Wachara's 9-year-old daughter, who also lost her mother in August this year.
Just now, I prayed for my father to return soon. I prayed for Grandpa and Grandma to have good health.
Before the war began, 30,000 Thai nationals were working in Israel, mostly in the agricultural sector. Wachara and his brother moved there in 2020 to earn more money, sending home at least 2,000 Australian dollars each month to help clear their family's debts and pay their father's medical bills.
I recall what my son said to me. He told me, "Mother, as long as I'm not dead, you don't have to worry. I'll provide everything for you." That was how he encouraged me. He also said, "The debt I haven't yet paid off, I will do my best to repay. I won't let myself struggle and I won't let my parents suffer as long as I have the strength." So I remember these words, and whenever I see his picture, I cry.
Using some of the $130,000 compensation received in July from the Israeli government, Wachara's parents paid off their debts and purchased some land. But working the land is no easy task, especially as Wachara's father monitors the news closely, his concern for his son seriously impacting his health.
If you ask how I feel so heavy. I've been to the hospital 2 or 3 times because of my son being taken. My blood pressure was high and I had to be admitted to the hospital a few times. I can't stop thinking about it. Since the incident in Israel, until today, I still think about my son all the time.
In the October 7 attack, Hamas militants killed 41 Thais and abducted 30 Thai labourers. Since then, Malaysia was part of diplomatic efforts to secure the return of 23 Thai nationals. But negotiations over the release of the remaining Thai hostages is still ongoing. Last week, Thailand's Prime Minister pushed for Iran to help broker their release. For families, it can't come soon enough.
I wish for this brutal war to end. I'm just an ordinary Thai person caught in these terrible events. Everyone has suffered enough, and I've suffered enough too, waiting for my son. For over a year now, I've been waiting, and I still haven't heard anything about how my son is doing.
To India now, where the results are in for 2 state elections. In a surprise victory, the ruling BJP won a 3rd consecutive term in the northern state of Haryana. But in the Jammu and Kashmir region, the local National Conference Party, which is part of the main opposition alliance led by Congress, won the most seats. Here's South Asia Bureau Chief Meghna Bali on why these elections are significant.
These were the first assembly polls to be held since India's general election earlier this year, which saw Mr. Modi return to power with a reduced majority. It's also the first local poll since the government stripped the Muslim-majority region of its autonomy. Following that move, a sweeping crackdown took place. Thousands of additional troops were deployed, hundreds were detained, and the internet was cut off for over 18 months, marking the world's longest internet blackout. Kashmir was already one of the world's most militarized regions, claimed by both India and Pakistan. And since the 1990s, an armed insurgency against Indian rule has taken thousands of lives, including civilians and security forces. Many Kashmiris have historically boycotted elections, seeing it as an endorsement of India's rule. But many voters told the ABC that this time they wanted to use their ballots to voice their concerns after years of direct rule by New Delhi.
Returning to Taiwan's National Day, Ilham Issak, reporter for ABC Chinese, joins us from Taipei. Ilham, what was LaiChingTe's message when it came to Taiwan being referred to as the Republic of China? Has it been a significant shift from his predecessor's stance?
Yes, Yvonne, there's been a marked recalibration of rhetoric from President LaiChingTe's address on Nation on Thursday. As you know, DPP, the party of President LaiChingTe, as well as his predecessor, have been pushing for a Taiwanese identity that is distinct and different from the Chinese one. Although DPP has managed to win a historic third term in the last presidential election, they couldn't perform nearly as well in the legislative elections. And so perhaps in an effort to appeal to the centrists, to the moderates, or simply to the people who are very concerned about the increasingly heated rhetoric eventually drawing the ire of China's military might, LaiChingTe has decided to mention ROC several times in his speech, and even paying homage to Wuchang uprising and that established Republic of China, and nodded to the founding ideals of Republic of China, and said, even though the ideals of democracy and freedom have been suppressed in the years of authoritarian rule, they're very much vibrant and alive now here in Taiwan. That said, LaiChingTe has reiterated his position that both sides of the strait are not subordinate to each other, and People's Republic of China have no right to represent Taiwan.
And Ilham, what is the atmosphere like in Taiwan? How concerned are people there about China's reactions to the celebrations?
Well, people were anticipating some form of military drill coming from China in response to President LaiChingTe's address to nation. That has yet to happen. And I was actually on the street on the National Day, talked to people about how concerned they are about such response, and some have expressed that they are confident about their national defense against any military aggression. And the sense I get is that Taiwanese people at this point are pretty much used to China responding with military drills, and they have even jokingly called this an act of bombardment of fish, referring to military drills in the seas surrounding Taiwan.
Ilham Issak in Taipei, thank you.
Thank you.
South Korean author HanKang has won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature. The 53-year-old is best known for her 2007 novel, The Vegetarian, which won the Man Booker Prize and was later made into a film. Born in 1970, she comes from a literary background. Her father was also a well-regarded novelist. It's the second time a South Korean has won a Nobel Prize ever. In the year 2000, former South Korean President Kim Dae-jung was awarded the Peace Prize. Rescue teams in Thailand have enlisted the help of some serious muscle, using elephants to help them reach residents cut off by severe flooding in the north of the country. The towering animals strode easily through almost a metre of water. That was waist deep for humans. Thailand has been hit by heavy rain for several weeks, with floodwaters cutting off hundreds of residents in ChiangMai. A glitch in Indonesia's online visa system has been leaking passport data. Travellers from Australia, China and India have reportedly been affected. Here's Indonesia correspondent Bill Birtles with more.
It's not clear how many people have been affected by this glitch. Potentially, it could be thousands. The ABC has heard from 3 Australians who separately travelled to Bali in the past few months. They all had the same problem. On their electronic visa document issued by Indonesia's government was a QR code. When they scanned it, it brought up the passport details of complete strangers, their full name, date of birth, their passport number, their photo. One traveller was presented with those details of a 4-year-old boy from Perth. Others had the details of travellers from India and China. Now, Indonesia's Immigration Department has confirmed to the ABC that it is aware of this problem and has been for some time. A spokesman said that every day they receive tens of thousands of electronic visa applications. He described this glitch as an anomaly, and he said that they are working to fix it. But a cybersecurity expert here told us that these sorts of problems around data privacy are far too common here in Indonesia. Australia's embassy in Jakarta has been in contact with the Director General of Immigration to raise this issue, And one of the affected Australians who alerted the embassy, she was told that the Australian side has raised strong concerns to their Indonesian counterparts about keeping the data of Australians who travel here secure.
Indian business giant Ratan Tata has died at the age of 86. Mr. Tata ran the conglomerate Tata Group for more than 20 years, transforming it into a global powerhouse. Under his leadership, the group acquired big names including British tea firm Tetley, luxury car brands Jaguar and Land Rover, as well as steel maker Chorus. Tributes have been pouring in, including from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has described him as an extraordinary human being. China has imposed taxes on imports of European brandy after EU countries raised tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The European Commission is planning to challenge China's new duties at the World Trade Organization, calling it an abuse of trade defense measures. But China maintains the move is an anti-dumping measure to protect its domestic producers. French brandy producers say the tariffs will be catastrophic for the industry. More than a dozen US states have sued Chinese-owned TikTok, accusing the social media platform of helping drive a mental health crisis among teenagers. A bipartisan group of attorneys general alleges the company uses addictive features to hook children to the app and that it has intentionally misled the public about the safety of prolonged use. TikTok has called the lawsuit disappointing and says many of the claims are inaccurate and misleading. The platform is already battling a law passed by Congress that will ban it from the US unless Chinese parent company ByteDance agrees to a sale. Well, staying in the US as the November 5th presidential race heats up, attention is turning towards the millions of citizens abroad. Expats, including those living in Japan, Taiwan and Australia, have become unlikely targets for what is shaping up to be one of the most consequential elections of the century. Lachlan Bennett reports.
You are not alone. You are not alone.
It's a lot of people for a town hall. If you're a US citizen living overseas, you can vote in the presidential election. But you probably won't. An estimated 4.4 million Americans are living outside the States, but less than 8% voted in 2020. So they don't tend to get a lot of attention from politicians. But this year is different. This year, they're in the spotlight.
The overseas vote this year is coming under a level of scrutiny that we've never had before.
Susan Jedustetska has spent 2 decades helping overseas citizens vote, and the sudden attention is unprecedented.
Candidates are looking for votes under every rock they can find. They're finally realizing that there is an underused right to vote abroad, that there is a large population of millions.
The Democrats are spending almost $500 million on overseas advocacy. Meanwhile, Trump has claimed that anyone living overseas can get a ballot. And the Republican National Committee has filed a lawsuit in North Carolina that claims that the Overseas Voting Act is undermining the state's residency requirements for eligibility.
There's been quite some gaslighting already, where there's going to be this claim that non-citizens are voting from overseas. Our registrations and ballot requests are put through the same very, very grueling process of scrutiny. We welcome any scrutiny. We welcome a spotlight on overseas voting because too many Americans abroad don't realize they have that right.
Allegations aside, this election is going to be tight. A few thousand votes from Japan or Jamaica could make a difference. So why don't expats vote?
It's already a little bit more complicated in America to vote than it is in a lot of other places. And then when you're living abroad, the rules aren't always clear and obvious. You know, some states have different rules and requirements for eligibility in terms of residency, and those kinds of institutional bureaucratic barriers just get in the way of participation in a lot of instances.
North America and Europe have the most expats, but there are significant US communities in Australia, Japan and Taiwan. But voting varies from place to place. A quarter of US citizens in Germany voted in 2020, but only 3% did in Hong Kong. The US Vote Foundation has developed online resources to help expats navigate the electoral system. But maybe there's an easier way to get Americans to the polls.
If there's one innovation I wish we could take from the Australians, it's democracy sausages. Make it into an event, make people turn up, cast your ballot, grab a hot dog. We don't do that in the United States, and I wish we would.
Whatever the result, this election is likely to have lasting impacts in Asia. China's relationship with the States is rocky at best, and the region is full of potential catalysts for conflict, from the South China Sea to Taiwan and trade. And for those living in Taiwan, like Trent Jackson, having a say on who decides US foreign policy is essential.
From both political parties, there's always been strong support for Taiwan. But it is worrying when sometimes maybe Trump will say Taiwan is stealing semiconductors from the US, or Taiwan is a bargaining chip with China. Yeah, I can't vote at all in Taiwan. So it's my one chance to voice my opinions, my political opinions, and my rights as a citizen.
Pets were once banned in China, but as the country became more urbanised, cat ownership increased rapidly. It's led to an unexpected problem, though. Now there are at least 53 million stray cats on the streets of China, a number that's on the rise. For Asia Newsweek, Jojo Zhou talks to those who devote their lives to taking care of the strays.
This apartment in China's eastern city of Nanjing is home to more than 100 cats. But this is not a cat resort. It's a safe harbor for those from the street. This is just one of the many examples of how Chinese volunteers are rescuing street cats across the country. China reportedly has more than 53 million street cats. And with no national system in place to manage them, the country mostly relies on volunteers. Research suggests the number could rise even further, creating an ever-growing crisis. Gao Fengying, a 56-year-old retired woman, rented this apartment to have street cats. She's been doing these for 18 years.
这些猫啊，都是我一只一只捡来救的，每一个猫都有一个不寻常的故事。下来吃灯笼上面。
Miss Gao spends 7 to 8 hours a day feeding, cleaning, and giving medical treatment to the cats.
猫孩子，他们都是我的家人，都是我的孩子一样的。我爱他们，甚至爱过超过我爱我的生命。
Her efforts are part of a larger nationwide struggle. In cities like Shanghai, Xi'an, Shenzhen, and Yinchuan, similar stories play out. Volunteers, often without funding, work tirelessly to help the growing population of stray cats. Recently, a typhoon in Shanghai destroyed a shelter built by volunteers, leaving hundreds of cats without protection. In the absence of government support, these volunteers find themselves stretched to the limit.
我就这样经常都被人投诉，说那个房间有一股尿骚味这样子。
So, what do cats mean to the Chinese public? And why are there so many street cats in China? Cats have long been revered in Chinese culture, symbolizing luck and prosperity. In the Song Dynasty, Chinese people started buying cats for their homes. It is also reflected in many Chinese painting and arts. Despite this cultural significance, the streets are now home to millions of them.
It's not just an issue specific to China, it is a global issue. On the one hand, because of economic growth in China, better living standards, more people having cats, and the number of people who don't care for the cats, they don't know how to care for the cats, they are not responsible pet owners. The number of these people also growing. So that's why, yes, you see, increasing number of stray animals in China.
In urban China, pet ownership has boomed, but many families who purchase cats soon find themselves overwhelmed and abandon them for different reasons. This is Xiao Wuqian. He was bought by a young couple for 5,000 yuan, only to be left behind when they split up.
我计划了大概马上有快9年，他特别聪明，乖巧。
This problem is compounded by China's underground pet trade. Cats are bred on sanitary conditions and sold at low prices, often discarded after being used for breeding. Like Da Hui, a cat found abandoned after years of exploitation.
人家搞繁殖，主人不要了，送给人家搞繁殖，关在笼子里面。 太可怜了，我不救了它就没得命了。
This lack of responsibility extends beyond ownership. There are deep-rooted misconceptions about street cats. Many people believe cats spread disease or cause hygiene problems, leading to cases of abandonment and abuse.
And there is also a lot of misperception about the families having pregnant wife or pregnant daughter-in-law. Oftentimes in the past would try to give up the cats on the false assumption that these cats would bring, illness to the babies. So that needs to be educated. That's wrong.
Chinese public uses Hello Street Cat, a phone app that allows community to stay connected. Thousands of live cameras across the country allow users to monitor the street and trigger a machine to release cable through donation. However, scenes of cat abuse captured on camera has sparked a fierce debate on social media. Without legal repercussions, those responsible often face only public condemnation.
That's right. China doesn't have a law to protect pets and street animals. But why?
Despite increasing call for animal protection, China remains one of the few industrialized nations without formal law protecting street animals. Volunteers and animal welfare organizations shoulder the burden, but they are fighting a losing battle.
There is no legal provision in China's legal system providing protection or legal protection to companion animals such as dogs, cats, and other animals, living with the family. Beijing, as far as I know, every year the city government would earmark certain amount of money from the government budget for local organizations to do sterilization of street cats.
Every year during China's legislative period, activists push for laws protecting street cats and dogs. Public support for animal rights continues to grow, with social media campaigns attracting greater attention.
It is difficult to ask the general public to work on the legislation, but when the government is inviting people to give opinion for the legislation, they should really do that. They should really voice out the situation.
The government's reluctance to pass animal protection laws leave millions of animals vulnerable and the volunteers exhausted. People like Ms. Gao continue to dedicate their time and resources to care for street cats. She does online streaming at home, asking for the public to donate for her cats.
我也希望有社会上的人多来关爱这些流浪动物，能与我共度难关，让我在这条路上继续走下去。
With no governmental support, many volunteers are struggling to keep up. Some of them even face bankruptcy. Joe, ABC News.
And that's all we have time for. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.